Go.
All right. Hello, I'm Corey. Pretty awful at presenting, but I'm going to do my best. I got a cool demo at the end, so that should hopefully make up for it. I'm going to present selenium-simple-test, which is an acceptance testing framework that I built with some colleagues. It runs on top of Selenium, which I'll explain in just a minute. But so acceptance testing is basically, so UAT, or user acceptance testing, you're testing through a web browser, so this isn't your unit tests in your code base. This is something that you'd want to do. Actually, where I work, we run it on every check-in, but if you can get a quick running suite where you can do kind of a browser level integration test, this is something you might want to look at. So it's built on top of Selenium. Selenium project started 5 or 6 years ago. It was a JavaScript. It would basically inject JavaScript into your current browser session and kind of control your browser like that. They completely rewrote basically the entire project. They merged it with the WebDriver project. So if you use kind of modern Selenium, it doesn't do the JavaScript model anymore. It basically grabs a direct connection to your browser. So each of the kind of major browser vendors, maybe not Microsoft, but I know like Opera, Apple with Safari, Mozilla and Google are all kind of on board with Selenium. They have representatives from the organizations that take care of maintaining the individual browser bindings. So it's at its core, it's just a library for browsing, for driving a web browser, so you can control your web browser and you can interact with the elements on there. You can use it. It's kind of a very large project that has bindings for multiple languages. Python's one of the more popular ones. It tends to be good and as a test language, even if your code base isn't in Python, and if your code base is in Python, it's an exceptional match. It's cross-platform. You can execute locally in a grid setup or on remote machines, and there's Python bindings available at the package index. And the one key point is that Selenium is not a test framework. It's simply just a library for interacting with your browser. A lot of people think I'm going to do Selenium testing and I'm going to use Selenium as my test framework, and that's completely not what it is. What it is it's a technology that you kind of have to mix together with the test framework to have a complete testing solution. So if you're in Python, at the very minimum, you'd want to use something like unit test. So what we've done is taken this Selenium API, kind of bolted on a runner, and our own kind of notion of how to build tests. So it's sort of geared not towards an expert developer, but more something that could be used by like our QA and more junior coders. So there's not a lot of, you basically write a procedural set of steps. It almost forms like a DSL, a little mini language of functions that you can kind of compose and make this easy way to walk through your application. It also gives you a way to assert various things. So instead of just being stuck with kind of unit test assertions, there's ways to assert non-trivial things like given a table, assert that it has these rows. That might be 10 lines of Python. That's a single function call here. So there's an API reference available online if you want to dig in and see what it's all about. But just to show you a kind of the simplest possible example, you could import the SST actions package, and this just goes to a URL and it asserts that the title contains the given text. So it just spins up a browser, goes to the page, grabs the title element from the DOM, and just asserts that that text is in it. And that would be the entire script right there. There's no setup teardown, though there can be if you want to add that to there. It'll open your browser for you. It'll close your browser at the end of the test automatically. There's some nice command line switches if you want to run in a headless display instead of actually seeing your browser. So if you have a continuous integration server, if you're running on some headless server, that's fine. So I wanted to show kind of a neat example. Most examples for like these web automation things tend to be like log into Gmail and check your email or something like that. So does anyone play Sudoku? So it's a fun game, kind of maddening game. They hide in the back of newspapers where you have this 9x9 grid and you have to fill it with numbers, so you use all 9 digits going each direction, and the less digits they give you, the more difficult it is, and it can be extremely difficult to do by hand. So I want to see if I can mash up my test framework with a Sudoku solver and play some online Sudoku. So there's this site, websudoku.com. It's got different modes, so you can go up to evil mode where they give you just a few clues, and it would normally be pretty time-consuming to test or to programmatically automate. So I searched online. Peter Norvig from Google is an AI researcher and author. Says it turns out to be quite easy to solve every Sudoku puzzle. He uses constraint propagation and search. I'm not going to get into it, but it's a fascinating article. It's at norvig.com/pseudopy.html. He goes into a very kind of clever and elegant solution for it, but I just took his code and I'm using his solver. So you pass it in a string, which is basically the grid represented in a single string with either a digit or a dot for a space. So using a combination of his Sudoku solver and my SST framework, I was able to create this code. It's kind of ugly code, but it goes to websudoku.com on evil level. It creates a list of grid IDs. This is just because they have kind of a weird website. It's not the most straightforward to automate. So I pull out the values for every grid. I want to get a string in the form that I can pass off to the solver, and then the solver actually gives me it back in kind of a different orientation that I want to iterate through, so I have to flip it around using some list comprehension. And then finally, when the puzzle's complete, I'll click on the submit button, and then I'm going to assert that the text in the message that's given back says congratulations, and then it'll close my browser. So let's see if it'll work. So just to show how fast his Sudoku solver is. Okay, that just solved 100 Sudoku puzzles at an average of like 4.5 milliseconds per puzzle. So to invoke the test script that I just showed before, I would just call SST run, and the name of my file is the name of my test without the PY extension. So here's the test runner firing up. Oh, you can't see it. It's all happening too quick. Let's try that again. It did win, though. The website administrator must think I'm crazy.
Is this to get on the leaderboard?
So that's all I had to present. If you go to testutils.org/SST, you can see more information about the test framework. And that's it. Thank you.
Any questions for Corey? No? All right. Deb.
Wait. Oh. Back to the URL.
Sure.